Hi everyone, and so we're getting close to the end. It's time to think about your capstone project. In week 3, or module 3, we are going to spend some time outlining what it is our intentions will be for the capstone project, putting together a bit of a timeline, and number 1, making a decision about how we're going to approach the capstone. Toward the end of Module 3, beginning of Module 4, I'll introduce you to your mentors. We have some wonderful IB educators who are lined up to work with you and support you in finishing the program. So the first decision that you need to make with respect to your capstone project is, are you going to do this with your class and actually make it a live application of your thinking and your planning? Or are you going to do this as more of a simulation, in which case you'll make a presentation and an interview with your mentor? So the role of your mentor is going to vary depending on which choice you make. And certainly your timeline is going to vary depending on which choice you make, given that we are in the middle of July. And unless you're teaching summer school and have the ability to make this kind of unit available to your students, you're probably waiting until September if you want to do choice A. So let's take a look at the two choices. What they have in common is there are 3 parts to each of them. And they are essentially the same 3 parts, and then just the middle part that is treated differently depending if you're going to choose the simulated version. So the first part, and I'm going to show you version A, which is the practical application version. That's the version that you're going to choose if you want to apply the unit that you've designed in a class with students. What the 2 projects have in common is, number 1, it's about developing that unit of inquiry. That's the big piece to the project. And you can see the elements of the project or of the unit that are included here. And we'll just move that out of the way. So first of all, you want to use one of the planners, and we took a look in one of the earlier courses at the variations of the planner that you can choose. And you're going to do your planning in one of the recognized formats. Secondly, think about the students that you will actually be teaching. This is what we call reflection before learning or before teaching. Thinking about who will actually be in that class. Do you have students with identified learning needs, inclusion and accessibility requirements? What will it look like in the context of designing that unit to consider the differentiation needs and the removal of barrier needs for those students? You have students with language, different languages who are going to be working in your classroom and working in a second language if you're teaching in English or whatever language you're teaching in. You're going to design the teaching resources and the materials that students will be using throughout the course of this unit and include that with the unit. And you're also going to be considering, well, how will theory of knowledge play in? Are there places where I can make that explicit? Likewise, connections to CAS and the extended essay, supporting those programs for students. And where are we developing the learner profile? And then the last part to think about in terms of the project, and up here too, we should be thinking about approaches to learning. That's an important piece. When you're thinking about the skills that students are developing, thinking about the approaches to learning and where you're going to explicitly teach which skills are necessary for success in this unit. And then the last piece you're going to do is design a sufficient number of assessment tasks to use all of the assessment criteria for your subject group that gives some kind of variety of the types of tasks students would be likely to engage with in a diploma program. And the assessment tools that are going to be necessary for you to score them, rubrics, checklists, whatever that may look like, and some commentary around how it matches the selected criteria. So that's an overview of the unit. That's the same regardless of the variation that you select. So choice A, practical application, you can teach it with students. Choice B, it's an interview and simulated application, but the planning of the unit is the same. Back to choice A. The part that's different is how the application takes place. So if you have a group of students and you want to actually see how does my thinking play out with a group of kids, and get feedback from them, or get feedback from, you can invite a colleague in to observe the lesson, or lessons. You could video samples and make a commentary on your own using something like VoiceThread or other types of technologies that would be helpful to do that. And you're going to make some observations and reflections on the teaching. You're going to include 3 samples of the teaching that you've evaluated. And as I mentioned, some of those examples could look like are listed here. For the other version, the simulation, this is where it's different, as obviously you're not working with a group of students, so you can't include examples of your teaching there. So what you're going to do is present your unit to your mentor. You're going to present it, you're going to discuss the connections to the IB practices and the IB values, all of the things that we've been looking at over the course of the 4 units that should be reflected in the planning of your unit. You're going to talk that through with your mentor. You're going to explain your unit planning process, your differentiation strategies, and then your mentor is going to ask you questions about it, kind of putting you in that simulation of if you were teaching this, and giving you some scenarios that they perhaps have experienced as experienced classroom teachers and practitioners in IB diploma schools and classrooms. Then the third part is pretty much the same in both. So for the practical application, choice A, it's a reflection. You're going to provide a critical analysis. Again, these are the components that are going to be completed. We've already discussed those. And then you're also going to make a reflection on your evolution as an IB teacher. And in choice B, that's the same thing. Either way, you will have gained insights, either from interacting directly with students or interacting with your mentor. And so you're going to discuss those as part of your reflection. All right, so those are the overviews. So the first choice you have to make is, which variation am I going to use, and what is my timeline for completion? So I'm going to put some materials together for you to help you sort through that choice, and then we'll get down to business. Thanks.